Exercise 1, SolidWorks 2019. In this exercise, we're going to take a look at the basics of SolidWorks. We're going to build the part that you see in front of us, which is a collection of shapes, rectangles, circular cutout. We're going to also shell it, and we'll add some color to it, and a variety of different things. We'll take a look at fillets, as well as chamfers are going to be discussed in this. So to begin with, just note that you could go to www.vertanu, V-E-R-T-A-N as in Nancy, UX, 1, the number 1.com, and you could actually get the instructional manual, any part files that are used in this instructional set, as well as direct links to the videos and even exams. I'm going to go ahead and go to the instructional manuals, and now I haven't updated this just yet. I just got 2019 and working on it, so this is an older manual. There's going to be some updates to it, but generally it's pretty close. The parts are pretty much the same. I'm not going to alter them all that often unless there's some new technology or functionality that I'm going to show. But we're going to begin off with exercise 1, and then exercise 2, exercise 3, and so on and so forth. Okay, now this part, let's begin with a new part file. So first of all, when you first start up SolidWorks, let me close out the part, you can see you have the interface. And up here where it says SolidWorks, there's a little arrow. You could click or move over that little arrow, and it will give you some pull-down menus. I like to tack that in. See this little thumbtack? Go ahead and click on that. Because it's easy to describe, just go to File, Save As, or Save, or whatever instruction is a little bit easier sometimes than describing an icon. But we're going to go ahead and go to File, New. And now inside SolidWorks, there's 3 primary file types. There's Part, Assembly, and Drawing. And we're going to start off with parts for the first 4 exercises. Exercise 5 will take a look at assemblies, and exercise 6 will deal with creating 2D drawings from those parts and assemblies. So let's begin. Just hit OK. And describing the interface a bit more, you can see this is the ribbon bar, and these are the tabs that enable you to activate different modules that might be in your system. Beware, you may not have all the same modules I have, but you'll see there's SolidWorks add-ins, as they call them. And there's a number in here that you may or may not have. We're not going to need anything except Photoview 360, and even then we don't really need it to do the exercise. It's just to enhance the look and appearance of the part. But if you wanted to bring up certain tabs, just note you could always right mouse button click on any of these tabs, and you'll get a pull down of some of the different add-ins or modules that are installed in here. And you just check off what you want, and then you would most likely see a tab, which you could activate the tab and you'd see the icons available for that. Over here on the left, this is what they call the Feature Manager Design Tree. The Feature Manager, or Feature Tree, or Tree, sometimes I just refer to it, will contain your history of everything that you do in chronological order. So the very first item we put in is going to be closest to the top. The very last item will be at the bottom by default, and everything in between. You'll also see you could select a material. If you right-click on that select material, you'll see you could edit the material, or else they give you a short list of some general materials that are likely to be used. But let's go ahead and go to Edit Material. Now with solid modeling, there's so many advantages to it, and one of them is that you can find out at any time how much that part is going to weigh, depending upon the material that you select. This is you'll see there's a bunch of materials to select from in this library. You could also procure additional libraries or create your own. There's custom materials that you could add. And they're also used for analysis as well. So if you have the analysis plugins, you could actually get some great information, variables that are automatically entered for you because of this. But let's go ahead and we're going to select aluminum alloys, and I'm going to go with the 1060 alloy. And you'll see the different like the yield strength, the tensile strength. I'm going to go ahead and set it to SI megapascals, Newton meters. So here you can see the yield strength, the tensile strength, and so on. Go ahead and just hit apply one time and then hit close. You'll now see that's listed over on the left. Now you don't have to do that, by the way. This is just, by default, it uses the parameters of, or I should say specifications of, I think, ABS plastic if you don't supply any information. But it doesn't really matter. We're going to take a look, though, so we can measure our part later. Now you'll see below that you have front, top, and right planes. And this is a plane-based modeler versus Cartesian coordinate modelers that you might see like out there. But basically the planes are your paper that you're going to sketch on. And the planes are infinite. So even though you see when you glide over these, you'll actually see a rectangle. That's just a visual that's provided. So basically you could get a bearing on what you're looking at on the screen. But they are essentially infinite. We're going to go ahead and click on the front plane. But there is a bit of a logic that involves which plane do you want to sketch on first. For most of my exercises in here, we do typically use the front plane. And quite honestly, if you are savvy with 3D, once you get savvy enough, it almost doesn't matter. You have ability to alter some of these things. You just note, though, you can't rotate or change the coordinate system, which you'll see in a second. You'll see the coordinate system is basically the origin that you see here. That's your zero marker in space. And those three planes all intersect each other at that origin, and that's an anchor. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on the front plane, and when you click on it, if you don't move your pointer away too quickly, you'll get this quick launch, and mine disappeared because I moved it, but I'm going to go ahead and click on it again. Actually, I'm going to click on the little picture next to the front plane so it doesn't want to edit the text. And you'll see you have sketch. That's to create a new sketch, and we actually want that. There's also hide, there's zoom to selection, and there's normal too to reposition the screen so it runs parallel to whatever you're selecting. With that being said, we do want sketch, but just be aware if you did miss this, like if you move away from it, you could always go up here to sketch, and this is more the scenic route, so i.e. it takes a little bit longer. You go to the sketch tab, and then you could click on the sketch tool. Incidentally, if you click on the little arrow underneath, you'll see there's sketch, 3D sketch, and 3D sketch on plane. Beware 3D sketch and 3D sketch on plane are covered later on in exercise 6, and we don't typically use those, and we don't really need to use those for the introduction course. But there are some advantages for, like, example piping and things like that for 3D sketches. But believe it or not, we're only going to use 2D sketches, and then we'll be able to draw 3D models from those. All right, so now that we have the front plane selected, we have a sketch started on that, and we see the rectangle is normal to the screen by default, and the origin is right there. That's your zero marker in space, and you see the Y and the X axis there. That doesn't actually say Y and X, but you can see it down below here in the lower left. Okay, so now what we're going to do, you'll see that there's a lot of tools that have become available for sketching. And if you hit the little arrow to the right of line, you'll see there's lines, center lines, and midpoint line. Center lines are great for construction geometry. We're not going to use it. They're also used for mirroring. They're used for revolves. There are several things you can do with those, but we'll see that in just a little bit. First, notice there's line. And you know what? The line tool, nothing magical. It's just a typical line tool. Instead, let's kind of use something else. I'm going to move down here and just click over here. I'm actually going to click on the rectangle tool, the little arrow to the right of that. And you'll see there's a collection of different types of rectangles that you could select from. We're going to go with corner rectangle. Go ahead and select corner rectangle. Now move your pointer to this origin, the center of the screen. And when you get the little orange dot that appears, that means you're locking in, as well as another symbol to the right of what looks like a pencil. Right next to the pencil eraser, there's a yellow block. And that's the symbol for a relationship being established. And whatever the little image is an indicator. Like in this case, it's indicating that you are starting from that anchor point or your origin, and it's locking in coincident. And it will keep that relationship in there. So click. Now when I say click, I'm referring to your left mouse button. Anytime you hear me just say click, I usually don't say left mouse button. Every once in a while I'll say it, but for the most part, that's the mouse button of choice for selecting items and so on. Now, every once in a while, you'll hear me say right mouse button. And when I refer to the right mouse button, I always try and refer to it twice so that you know that it's going to be the other mouse button that you're going to select. So let's begin. In this case, just click, which one time, and now move your pointer. Let me try that again. There. And move your pointer to the upper right. And you'll see some X and Y values that appear, and that's just to get you close to the marker. It's not super accurate. You can see it's up to, 34 thousandths of an inch, or 340. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead. Oh, and also on the left-hand side, there's some parameters for entering values. I don't like using those because I think I've seen students over the 22 years I've been teaching this rely on those, overly rely on them actually, and unfortunately they don't lock in the dimensions. It will actually get it to that parameter, but anyone could go in and accidentally grab a corner of a line and drag it, and you've just lost whatever that parameter was that you drew in there. So I'm going to show you a more concrete way to ground these dimensions in so that doesn't happen. So this is my suggestion to you. Don't use that on the left. And you could use it, but just know it's kind of a weak dimensioning. Let's go ahead and just click up here anywhere. It doesn't really matter. We're making a rectangle. Now that we have that, you'll see these little blocks here, these green blocks. Those are the relationships that I was talking about. There's two types of constraints that you add inside SolidWorks. There's relationships, which are common elements of geometry, like perpendicularity, coincident, tangency, parallelism, things like that. And that's what these are. They align them. Like in this case, these little there's vertical line in that box there. That's an indicator it's locked in vertically, meaning if I were to grab this and try and drag it, it's not going to move at any sort of, or skew at an angle. It's always going to stay vertical. This one's horizontal. It's going to stay that way. I'm going to go ahead and I want to add some dimensions to this. So find the Smart Dimension tool. Now, if you hit the little arrow underneath Smart Dimension, you have all of your different ways of dimensioning. You have ordinate dimensions, horizontal ordinate, vertical dimension, horizontal. Smart Dimensions, if you're not doing ordinate, Smart Dimensions is just the choicest way to go. Gosh, I haven't heard that since the 80s. But anyhow, let's go ahead and click on that, and we're going to add a dimension now. Move your pointer, and you'll see that also the color of the geometry makes a difference. Blue lines indicate it's underdefined, or an underdefined state, meaning that there's no dimension tied, or maybe not enough dimensions or constraints tied to it to lock it in. When it is black like this, it has enough in that this is locked in vertically and it's locked into the origin, so it's not really going to move a whole lot other than extend. So let's go ahead and click on this line over here. And some of you like to click on the endpoints from older CAD systems that you might have used. Just note that if you do click on the endpoints, that's an extra click. And if you want to be truly efficient, you just click on the line and then move your pointer to the right and then be prepared to drop that dimension. Now notice this. Those of you who aren't familiar with dimensioning, might be new to this, imagine, and this is not a dimensioning class, by the way, it's a modeling class, so I don't go into too much of this. But what we're looking at is you want to imagine that those lines, that what they call extension lines, are kind of goalposts. And if you're going to kick a soccer ball or a football through it, you want to try and center it whenever you can. And that's what I'm going to do here. I recommend centering those dimensions. Okay, so with that, now once you click, it will open up the modify box. And now this modify box enables you to type in values. Notice you don't have to hit the backspace. I see a lot of students do that. That's another waste of a click. Not that that's a big deal, but add those all up. And, and also it doesn't look very professional if you're ever in an interview and you're backing up on something that you don't need to. So what I'm trying to show you is to where you're going to look, if you ever get tested for a job, you're going to look like a professional doing this. And that's why I go over those little details. But anyhow, you'll see it's highlighted in blue. And you can just type in a value. Now, if you're going to use your numbers key, make sure your numbers lock is on. Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and type in 5. And again, to prove that you know the software really well, don't type in 5.000. You don't have to do that. Just type in 5 and hit enter. It will know to automatically put in the trailing zeros. It's not going to put in anything else other than that. All right, let's try that again. Let's do this bottom line. Go ahead and get your pointer over it. You notice the line turns orange. Stay away from the midpoint. Stay away from the endpoints. Just click. And again, center it in the goalpost. It's going to look professional that way. Go ahead and click and type 3. You don't have to type 3.00. Hit enter on your keyboard. Now we're to size. Now I'm going to hit the green check mark on the dimension tool. Or you could hit escape on your keyboard. Escape is pretty much the universal tool for getting out of almost anything except sketches, and there's a variety of things, but most tools it will get you out of, so just remember that. Anyhow, we want to go ahead and we're going to create a 3D model from this, so we're going to go to the 3D tools, which is called features. So I'd like you to go to the upper left here and find features. And you'll see most of these are grayed out, and SolidWorks does that because those are tools you can't use. It's not going to give you tools that you can't use and confuse you. It only gives you what you can use. And right here, we want extruded boss base. So go ahead and select that. Now on the left, notice the feature tree that I called it has moved away temporarily, and we now have a boss extrude dialog box. These are really nice because they're out of the way, they're unobtrusive, and you could go ahead and specify different things. Now you have the from and you have from sketch, plane, vertex. We're not going to use that right now. That's a bit more on the advanced side. Don't worry about that. Ignore it every time we see it for this lesson. But below it is what's very important. You'll see that there's blind, there's up to vertex, up to surface, up to body, and mid-plane. We're just going to go with blind, and blind is just a specific distance in one direction. If you want to flip the direction, this little icon to the left of blind will do it, or you could click on the arrowhead, or you could drag the arrowhead back or forward. So if we did try and do that, you could grab the arrowhead with your pointer, just hold down, drag, and you'll see there's a little ruler that appears. And again, it's not super accurate. I mean, there you could get 1.5, but just note that if you're trying to put in some very high precision work, you usually want to type in the explicit value right over here on the left. So let's go ahead and do that. So on the left-hand side there, go ahead and type in 0.5. And I am working in inches. If you're working in metric, it's not the end of the world. You could always convert it right here. You could put in, or like if we wanted it in millimeters, we could select millimeters. But we're looking for inches. If your units are currently in millimeters, and rather than go in and change it in the options, you could just change it right here, and it will automatically convert it for you. And it doesn't scale it, it's actually converting it, the true dimensions. Okay, so that's inches. And you could also type in IN for inches, and vice versa, millimeters, MM for millimeters, or CM for centimeters. All right, so we can see our preview. And now let's go ahead and hit the green check mark. Now there's a green check mark up here in the upper left, there's one in the upper right, or you could hit the enter key. Those are 3 different methods you could use. Now the enter key doesn't always work, be aware, but those check marks will always work. All right, now we have this. Go ahead and click somewhere in the blank area of the screen, and whatever was pre-selected is now deselected, so you don't see any highlighted geometry. Now, those of you who are still in metric, if you want to change it, you could go down here where mine says IPS, yours probably says MMGS. But if you hit that little arrow, you'll see you could switch between these units. And there's also edit document units. And if you click on that, that's the same as clicking up here, but it's more of a direct approach. You can click on this gear. I'd like you all to click on the gear. And you'll see that's the system options. This is the heart of SolidWorks, where you could change virtually anything and everything. The system options tab are global settings. So whatever you change here is going to carry on through every part, every drawing, every assembly that you ever bring up on here. So be aware, these are permanent changes. You can change it. You could also reset it. If someone has tinkered with this, just hit the reset button. It strips it down to its original settings from the factory. But we're looking actually for document purposes. Also, for an example, some of the system options are like the colors and things like that. I prompt you, I don't recommend changing the colors just yet. You could do that later. But anyhow, so we have over here the drafting standard, and you'll see you could change this from ISO to ANSI. And I'm using ANSI because I'm in the States here, the American National Standards. So you can use that overseas. Feel free if you're in Russia, the GO standard, ISO, JIS, so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm using the ANSI standard. You don't have to if you're somewhere else in a different country. You could just leave it at ISO or whatever you're using. All right, but notice if you go to units, you could go over here and you could change the inches, pounds, second to mmgs. Also, how many trailing zeros do you want? Or how many decimal place precision? Remember, the more precision you add, the more costly the part, but let's face the facts. We're working in millionths nowadays. So you might want to actually set that, and you could do that right here. You could click and set up how many decimal place precision you'd like, up to 8 decimal places. I'm going to leave it at 2. You know what? I'll change it to 3. And go ahead and hit OK. Now notice there's a lot of other options in there. We're not going to see those right now. But over the course of this course, we will go through several of those options. Not all of them. There's just way too many to go through. Now that we have our part, our model, let's experiment with rotation. Now, the easiest and quickest way to rotate is if you have a middle wheel on your mouse. First of all, many of you want to scroll it. You'll see scrolling zooms in and out. And by the way, if you focus on a point, like in this upper left corner with your pointer, and keep it focused on there as you scroll in, it will zoom to that region. And then you can zoom out again. A quick fast key to refit it to the screen is F for fit. So hit the F key on your keyboard and it will zoom to fit. All right, now let's get to rotation again. That wheel, instead of scrolling it, some of you may not realize this, is actually a button. If you pushed it down as if it were a button and hold it, move your mouse left, right, up, and down, and that's dynamic rotation. And many of you know that from other CAD systems. That's pretty standard. All right, now, if you hold the control key and your middle mouse button down, it pans. All right. Now let's just let go of the key for the mouse for a minute and just hit your arrow keys on your keyboard. Left, right, up, and down. Rotates in 15-degree increments. If you hit the Alt and the arrow keys, it rotates clockwise and counterclockwise. Control in the arrow keys is just pan again. But Shift, hold Shift and hit the arrow keys, it rotates in 90-degree increments. Finally, the tool that does it all. You could either go up here to View Orientation, it brings up a View Orientation box, or the fast key, spacebar. Easy to remember. Hit the space bar, brings up the View Orientation box. Now you can move this over, and a lot of seasoned users do tack it in with the thumbtack there, and then it doesn't disappear. Or you could just let it, it's easy enough, just hit the space bar every time and keep it off the screen. I'd like my real estate. So, but look at this, you have front, and there's fast keys. Control 4 is the right view orientation. The back is Control 2, or this, there's isometric. Hit the little arrow, there's dimetric, trimetric. Let's go to isometric. There we go. Hit the spacebar again, go to front, hit the spacebar again, go to top. I think you get the idea. Let's go back to isometric. Now there is another tool in there. It's this blue cube, the view selector. I really like this. I call it the ice cube. You click on it because it's really cool, and you could actually click on this front face and it will rotate to it. Hit the spacebar. I know that was a bad pun. Anyway, hit the spacebar and you could click on the any polygon on that surface of that cube and go to that orientation. Another couple things here. If you want to change the view, like the picture, the background, you hit this little beach ball with the floor on it, and you'll see by default it's 3 points faded, but if you go to plain white, it'll give you a little bit different effect because the spotlights are all adjusted differently for these. And you can see you could go through a whole bunch of different ones. Under Manage Favorites, there's a whole bunch of them that aren't even showing that you could pick from. Now, you probably don't want all of them up there because some of them actually have backgrounds or courtyards like this. And it's neat stuff, but you might not want to model in that. I actually just like plain white. Now this little looks like a monitor as view settings. Hit that little arrow to the right of that, you'll see there's Real View Graphics that I have active. If your Real View Graphics are not activated, it's likely because it requires a professional graphics card. Professional graphics cards come in a couple different categories. Like most of us are aware of the NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel have graphics cards, or at least AMD and NVIDIA have standalone graphics cards. Their GeForce and their Radeon series are for gaming and general computing, but if you get Radeon Professional, that's a professional graphics card. And then the NVIDIA has the Quadro graphics card, and those are professional level. And with some of the Xeon processors that you would get with a workstation, they have integrated the P graphics. Instead of HD, they're the P for professional. And they would give, all those would give you real view graphics mode. And what real view graphics mode does is, you can't really see it here because there's no radiuses, but because it's aluminum, it would actually come out looking like polished aluminum. It doesn't look too much like that right now, but we'll see it shortly. If you don't have a professional graphics card, there's nothing you can do. You're just going to get, by turning it off, you're getting something more like that. So just be aware, professional graphics card is a nice thing to have. There's some other enhancements that you'll find in those cards that really make it worth its while, especially if you're working in a factory or an engineering firm working on this 8 hours a day or more. I would definitely recommend a professional grade graphics card over a gaming card. Okay, so with that being said, let's continue on here. Hit your space bar, make sure you're back in isometric mode. By the way, this normal 2 is one of my favorites. We're not going to use it right now, but that one zooms planar to whatever face you have selected. So be aware, sometimes you might have some arbitrary faces that are at some strange angle. You can select that and it'll bring it normal to that. Great for sheet metal. Now, I would like you to select this face of this model, and you'll see it will highlight. You'll also notice you have the ability to change the dimensions at this point. You can click on that 5 or that 3, double click on them, and actually change them. And if you hit the rebuild button, which is right up here, it will automatically update to that new size, or you can change the thickness. That's the beauty of parametric modeling. You can change it at any time. We'll look at that in a little bit, but what I was looking at was more this tool right here, the sketch tool. We're going to start a new sketch on this flat surface. Be aware, even though we started off with front, top, and right planes, and I told you that was the paper that you sketch on, you can sketch on any planar face of your model, as long as it's flat. So let's continue on. Click on that face. Remember, you could also go the scenic route, sketch, and then click on sketch again, and it will open up that sketch on that surface. A couple ways you know you're in a sketch. You'll see editing sketch. Also, the sketch arrows, you'll see the X and Y. If you don't see the arrows, like I'm going to click anywhere in this white area of the screen, if you don't see the arrows, or if you see like one arrow, that might mean or indicate that you selected the incorrect face, or you had a plane that was pre-selected that's not aligned to that face. So be aware, you could always hit rebuild or exit sketch and make sure you select the proper face and start sketching. So if you ever get to a point where you're drawing and you're not seeing it draw, even though you're in the sketch tool, most likely you selected the wrong face. And I usually just recommend hit rebuild, get you out of whatever you're in, and you can start fresh. Okay, so I'm sketching on the surface. I'm actually going to sketch normal to this profile. So I'm going to select this face again and hit the space bar. And let's try that normal to. Now, we could have just clicked on front, by the way, but I just wanted to show this to you because it's a very commonly used tool. Okay, so now I'm normal to, and I'm going to go back to the corner rectangle, the upper left. Click on it. Move your pointer back on the origin, and you'll see it will snap to it. Click. Now, here's another nice thing that SolidWorks does. When you move to any edge when you're sketching, it will pick up on that edge and allow you to go coincident to it. In this case, see the little coincidence symbol to the lower right of the pointer? Now, I don't want you to do this, but if you wanted to, this is very helpful too for symmetric parts. You can find the midpoint. We don't want the midpoint. If you lock into the midpoint, you're kind of locked in. There is a way to delete it, but let's not do that right now. So get down to where Y is about 1.5 inches approximately. Remember, this is just to get you close. Click. Hit escape on your keyboard. Now, you'll see that we have these relationships again, these boxes. And we don't need to see those. The other method is obviously dimensions, and I might not have explained that well enough. When we add the dimensions, that's the additional layer of constraints that you would add. But we don't really need to see these. I mean, they're nice to see, and you could call them up at any time. Let me show you how to turn those off, just in case you want to. Go to View up at the very top here. click on it, and then go to Hide Show. If there's ever anything you don't want to see or anything that you don't see that you think you should, you could go to Hide and Show, and you'll usually find it on this list. And what we're looking for is sketch relations. It's the fourth one to the bottom. When you turn those off by clicking on it, you'll see they'll disappear. But be aware they're still there. You could click on it, and there they are. So any line you click on, you can see them. And that's how I prefer to work. I don't want to see a bunch of little squares everywhere, but it is nice for new users so you can understand what's going on. All right, so we could see that this line is still blue, and I talked about that earlier. That means it's underdefined, meaning I could grab it with my pointer and drag it up and down. There's no dimension defining how high that is right now. So let's go to Smart Dimension and force that in. Glide up to this line, make sure the line turns orange. Don't click on the points, though you could, but I want you to click on the line. Center it in the goalpost, click, and make that 1.5. Hit enter. Now let's go to Features and Extruded Boss Base. Now right now we don't see how or where it's extruding to, so you might want to rotate. And if you remember, to rotate, the quickest way is your wheel on your mouse. Push it down as though it's a button. Hold it. Move your mouse to the right and down a little bit, and now you can see where it's extruding at. It actually is saying it's extruding at a 1/2 inch and it's outward. That's great. That's exactly what we want. It remembered the last dimension is all. So just leave it as is. Hit the green check, and it connected that. Now I'm going to click off of it, and then that blue highlight will disappear. So you can click anywhere in the white area of the screen. Now notice the features on the tree over here on the left. We have the base extrude 1. That was the first one, which was 5x3. You could click on it there, and the dimensions come up, and you could edit those. You could also click on Extrude 2 and edit this. Now, I do want to show you how to edit it. Now, when you click on Bus Extrude 2, move your pointer up here on the Quick Launch toolbar. And you'll see there's Edit Feature and Edit Sketch. Edit Sketch is where we put the 1.5 dimension, and we made the rectangle, and it has the constraints in it. The Edit Feature is the extrusion depth that we added. Let's go to Edit Feature for a moment. Now, you'll notice that you have the ability, there's a Merge Results. I want you to leave that checked on. By default, it's on. And otherwise, you would have two separate bodies if that were turned off. SolidWorks lets you do it, but in this case, we don't want to do it. So just make sure Merge Results is turned on. Notice you could type in a new value, make changes, and so on. But I just wanted to show you that you could edit virtually anything in the software. Hit the green check. Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a hole. To add a hole, there's a couple methods, and I'm going to show you the most basic one where you actually draw the hole and cut it. With this, you could do it every time. There is a hole wizard up here, which I don't want to show you just yet. It's a very nice tool, has a library of countersinks, counterborers, all sorts of holes, pipe taps, things like that. More advanced, we're going to hit that with exercise 4. Let's go ahead and click on this surface here and start a sketch with the Quick Launch. Otherwise, remember, if you forget to do this, you could go to Sketch and click on Sketch up here. Hit your space bar, and you could go Normal 2, or you could go to Front View Orientation. Either one will suffice. Now, we're going to make a hole. Find the Circle tool. Click on Circle. Move your pointer in this vicinity here. Now, you might see a little blue X there, the trailer. That's where I click to select the face. Ignore it. It really isn't valid for any sort. It's not any sort of anchor point or anything like that. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to click away from it and draw out my circle. So as I draw the circle out, you can see there's a radius, 0.4-ish. That's fine. Click. And now we want to locate. Now down here there's positions, but instead of that, let's use the Smart Dimension. Like I said, this is the wiser decision. Go to Smart Dimension. Click on the outside of the circle, drag it out. It's going to give you a diameter. Now, some of you who aren't familiar with dimensioning might say, well, that was 0.3 something, and now all of a sudden we got 0.721. Wait, what happened? Be aware that when we're drawing, it shows it as a radius. When we finally select the full, if it's a full circle like it is now, it's going to go to a diameter. Now, I could go ahead and just move this up here and click to release it, We want that to be 0.75 and hit enter. Now on the left, let's say you did want it to show as a radius. You could go in here and you could specify the radius while it's still selected. There's some leaders, tools, and things. There's lots of tools in here, in fact. And you should tinker around in there and look at what some of the options are. You could even put in notes in here. There's common symbols that you might want to use, things like that. Even dimensions, tolerances. Okay, the next thing we need to do is position this. Like, where is this located? Centered, like to this edge or to this top edge. Let's go to the Smart Dimension tool. Let's click on the left edge. Then move your pointer. Now don't fear there's a dimension that's appearing. That's the Smart Dimensions. This will override it. Move your pointer to the center of this circle or to the outside edge. Either one will work. Click, and now move your pointer up and squeeze it in over here between the goalposts. Click, and type in 1. And now we just position it 1 inch off the left edge. Now let's position it off the top edge, 1 inch. So click on the top edge, select the center, or select the outside. I'll show you, you can select the outside too. And move your pointer now to the left and center it between the goalposts, as I call it, or extension lines. Click and type in 1. Hit enter. And now hit escape a couple times to get out of the dimension tool. And now let's move these dimensions and lay them out how we would like to see them if we were to make a drawing. It's always good to lay them out to where they look clean and organized. You could get away with not doing that, but beware, it's just making it more of a challenge for yourself or someone later when they have to edit the part. And changes always occur, so I would recommend laying them out so that they look organized and easy to read. Also, be aware you can use these same dimensions. You could retrieve them in the drawings, which we'll learn in exercise 6. And they come up, 90% of the time, they come up exactly how you laid them out. Sometimes I've seen them where I didn't quite know why I did that, but for the most part, it's actually a very good way of adding the dimensions. All right. We've positioned it. It's fully defined now. We know because it's black. Let's use this tool up here. Hit this little arrow to the right there. And let's go to isometric. And go to features and extruded. Oh, wait. Don't hit extruded boss base. If we hit extruded boss base, it's going to add material. That's for adding material. We actually want to cut material. Now, SolidWorks is the only the system that I think I've used that actually separates cuts and adds. And so you have to go to extruded cut. So go ahead and find extruded cut. If you accidentally hit extruded boss base, hit escape, cancel out of it, and then try hitting extrude cut. Now you'll see it will start to get a preview like it's cutting into the model. Most of the time it's pretty smart in that it gets it right. Sometimes, depending upon your geometry, it might not get it quite right. It might actually start extruding to cut away from the model. And you just have to flip it. And the way to do that is grab the little arrowhead or just flip this little button here. You can see, flip it both directions. Okay. Now since we're removing material, we wanted to make it through. Now you'll notice it's set to 0.5, and that was the thickness of the plate that we made below there. And that's just fine. You could apply that, but be aware, as I talked earlier, change always occurs. And let's say someone changed this plate thickness to 0.75. They would then have to change this cut depth to 0.75 later on, and that's extra work. I'm going to show you how to avoid that extra work. And this is in the lines of what they call design intent. You basically look at your model and you try and figure out how would you like it to update if changes do occur, because they always do. And so this is a very basic example of that. But instead of blind, what we could do is we could select through all. And that way, no matter what that plate thickness changes to, it will always go through. And we don't have to worry about changing the whole depth. So let's change it to through all. Now you might notice there's through all both. That would be if there was another side of a material in the front, and there's not. So you didn't need through all both, just through all. And hit the green check. And now we actually have our hole. In the book, and if you're following along in the training guide, the lesson ends at this point. And then it goes into working on the labs. And you'll see the labs like page 23, page 24. There's some labs for you to work on. I will include those in the video, but I recommend you do them on your own and then watch the video. Go back and watch the video if you get stuck or if you want to learn some different techniques, because quite often I'll show you some fast ways to do things or neat techniques. But that's as far as this goes. But rather than finish this, let's say you're making a portfolio. Now, exercise 0, which if you find E0 SolidWorks, is actually shows you how to make a portfolio. And this might be the most valuable thing you could put together with all these parts. Now, if you try to use this as a portfolio piece, it's okay. It's really kind of boring and very primitive. I would recommend dressing it up a bit. And this is a great opportunity for you to try some things out and have fun with this. You'll see here there's a fillet tool. Hit the little arrow. You'll see there's fillet and there's chamfer. Let's first try a fillet. Now, the difference between the two is a fillet is a round or radius edge, and then the chamfer is an angle. But let's go with fillet first. And on the left, you'll see there's a lot of fillet options. We're just going to set the radius to 1 inch right here. Also, make sure you turn on full preview. Check that little full preview box. If you don't see a preview, it's probably because full preview was turned off, or the parameters of whatever you're putting in aren't acceptable. Like if you have a 1/2 inch edge and you're putting in a 2 inch radius, it can't do that likely. So you won't see a preview. All right, now that we have 1 inch there, go ahead and what you do is imagine this is in real life and you have a file and or sandpaper block and you want to put a nice round in here. You would touch the edge like I'm touching right there with my pointer. Those of you who are familiar with the 2D realm where you used a 2D CAD software, be where you might select the 2 edges that are adjacent to that. That's not how you want to do it. You want to select this edge right here, and you'll see a preview. And select this edge over here. You'll see another preview. Now, go ahead and select this edge, but watch this. I wanted to show you. We don't want that edge. That was by accident. Let's say that was by accident. Just click on that edge again to deselect it. Now, you could also select an entire face. And this is a very large radius to try and put on, and it might fail. So if you click on this surface, notice it's the surface there. Everything disappears because it couldn't do it. It's only a 1/2 inch thick, and I was trying to put in a 1 inch radius on both sides. So it takes the topology, this edge, and tries to add it. So that's no good. So click on that face again to deselect it. You'll also see over here in the blue box, if you ever wanted to get rid of one of these, you could right click in there and clear the selection. That clears everything, or delete, and that will delete just the one instance. But we want both of those in there. Go ahead and hit the green check and apply. So now we can see it's adding a bit of a sculpture effect here. And let's move on. Go underneath the fillet tool, hit the little arrow, and let's try a chamfer. Chamfer is an angle, and so make sure full preview is turned on. And over here are some of the chamfer parameters. Notice down at the bottom, 45 degrees is just fine. And we're going to go ahead and put in 0.125 right here, and then keep it at 45 degrees. You could go like distance to distance, and if we were to make them equal distances, of course we would get 45 degree angle. But let's go ahead and select this now. Select this edge right here. Now notice you could select a face. This is small enough. Oh no, it didn't support it. Don't bother. You could put a chamfer on this edge as well to make a countersink. We don't want that. If you want, you can leave it on. I don't really care. Have fun with this, and then select this edge. Try not to select these edges over here just yet. If you have any of those selected, deselect them, because I want to show you some tricks with shelling in just a moment. But anyhow, so we have these selected. Hit the green check. And look, we took a very ordinary part, and now it's looking like a nice sculpted shape, like some sort of enclosure almost. And I'm rotating with the middle mouse button, or I should say the wheel, by holding it down. Let's rotate it. Now practice rotating. If you want, pause my video And just try rotating in some of the move keys again. Remember, the arrow keys rotate in 15-degree increments. The Alt and arrow keys, clockwise and counterclockwise. Control and the arrow keys, or mouse button, it's actually pan. Shift is 90-degree. So take a few moments and tinker with that. Remember, the spacebar brings up the view orientation, so it's easy to get back to wherever you started. Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to make this a bit more of a complex part, but it's not going to be very hard. Select the shell command. Let's say this is an enclosure and needs to be hollowed out. Click on the shell command. Now, if you were to just apply it, which I don't want you to do, i.e. hitting the enter key or the green check, don't hit those yet, it would shell everything out on the inside, and you wouldn't see any difference from the outside. So avoid doing that. In fact, actually set this to 0.06, and now select this face right here. Now to select multiple faces, hold Control and select this side face and this face over here. And actually, I apologize, you didn't have to hold Control. That's only if you didn't have this dialog box open over here. But once you have those three faces selected and it's set to 0.060, hit the green check, and now we have it shelled out. Go ahead and rotate that. Take a closer look at what you just did. Now we've taken a very basic part and you've added some really nice enhancements to it and something that's very appealing for a potential employer to see, that you understand fillets, chamfers, and some shelling and some more advanced techniques. Basic advanced. So let's rotate this now in this direction so we're looking at it from this perspective here. Let's say we want to add some color to this. We already set it to aluminum, but maybe we want to add some blue tints or colors or whatever you'd like. Here's what I want you to do. Move your pointer over this surface of the chamfer. Click on it. Now once it's selected, the quick launch toolbar can be seen. And you'll see there's this beach ball, and it has a pencil on it. Appearances. Hit the little arrow to the right of it. And you could select from that individual face all the chamfers as a feature, the body, or the entire part. We actually want to just change the chamfer. So click right here on chamfer. And over here on the left, it will maintain aluminum, but you could tint it with these colors. Otherwise, go over here to the right for more advanced library items. Hit the little arrow to the left of appearances, and you'll see plastics, metals, painted, rubber, glass, lights, organic, miscellaneous. Let's go with painted, or you could go with whatever you like. I'm going to go with painted, and this one's a really interesting one, car, and you'll see some really neat painted effects, like there's gloss red, gloss blue. I'm going to go ahead and select gloss blue, and you'll see that feature now has the blue color to it. And you can select anything else you might want. And also over here, let's say you wanted a different color than that, like you wanted blue, but that was the closest you could get. You can use this little rainbow down here to adjust it. So let's say I want to make it more of an aquamarine or lighter blue. I could just move the pointer over what color I'd like to see and hit the green check to apply. And then click somewhere. Okay, now that you have that, I want to show you how to make a rendering. Now, the photorealistic renderings inside SolidWorks, you have to have the license, the proper license, I think professional to do it, and or you could just have this module as an addition. But let's go up here to SolidWorks add-ins. And remember, some of you may not have this. If you just have SolidWorks Core, which is the basic, so you might not have Photoview 360. But you can procure it from your SolidWorks reseller if you contact them, and they can help you out to get that if you really want to do this. But I'm going to go Photoview 360 and select it. And a new tab should appear, Render Tools. And you'll see you could edit the scene, there's integrated preview, final image, and all types of neat things. We're just going to tinker with integrated preview for right now. Click on that. Now when we do this, it gives you this option, like add a camera or perspective view. Let's go with turn on perspective view only. And perspective view adds a vanishing point. Similar to when you're taking a real photograph, when the room looks as though gets smaller the further you are away from it. That's what this does to the image. It actually adds that. And now you can see it actually has this enhancement. Mine is set up a bit higher, and you can actually probably hear my computer. I have a laptop, and the fan is going berserker because it's actually a multi-threaded process. It's taking advantage of the multiple cores and threads that I have associated with this processor. This is only a 4-core, 8-thread processor. And the more cores you have, the faster it's going to render, typically. And the longer you wait, the better the image will look. Now, you can see the floor is parked at the bottom there. To change that, you could go up here to Edit Scene. And you can see some different scenes to choose from over on the right. But you could also go over here to the left, and there's the Align Floor Width. And if you go with X, Y, it should align us just underneath from this direction. And I'm going to turn off Integrated Preview for just a moment because it does suck up the resources. I'm going to rotate this. And it seemed to have disabled my perspective view. Oh, let's see it. And so over here, you could re-enable it under View Settings, turn on Perspective. Okay, I also am not thrilled with the scene that I have. I'm going to go back to 3-point faded. There we go. And let's zoom up. And now we could go back to Integrated Preview. And if you just wait, sit back and wait, don't rotate it. It'll take a minute and it will render it. Now, some of you who have very fast microprocessors, it's going to be much faster than what I have. I have an older laptop here. And again, the longer you wait, the better the image will look, typically. And you can see the like little effects that I get because it's painted and then it's aluminum. If I wanted, though, I'm gonna turn off Integrated Preview. Just remember to turn off Integrated Preview because it does slow things down if you want to make changes. Select this face. I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to go to the body, and we see a little globe right there. Click on that, and it brings back our menu options. I'm going to go with polished. Notice it was satin finish aluminum by default. That was when I selected the material earlier. But if I go with polished aluminum, hit the green check, and now I could go ahead and turn on Integrated Preview, we're going to get a much different effect. You could also hit Control-Alt-Delete and Task Manager, and from here you could see the CPU information under Performance and Open Resources Monitor. And on the right you can see all the CPUs are working because this is a multi-threaded process. This is the advantage of having a great microprocessor. I have an older one, as you can see, an i7-4800, which is decent, but it's showing its age. Okay, so that completes exercise 1. Now the labs, like I said, that are in the book on Vertani1.com, you could go to and you could start working on those, and I highly recommend you pause the video. Don't watch the video and then do it. You're not going to, that's spoon feeding yourself. You're not going to learn as much if you actually try and do these on your own. And then later on, go back and take a look at how I did them and compare it, because there's a dozen ways you can make these models, easily a dozen ways. So I'm going to show you some new techniques. All right, I'm going to move ahead. I turned off Integrated Preview, and I'm going to start on the very first lab. The very first lab looks like the letter F, and you'll see it's 2 inches by 3.5, and then it has these little cutouts here. And then it's a 1/2 inch thick. So let's begin with that. I'm going to go to File, New, Part, and hit OK. Let's just draw on the front plane. Like I said, for the next several weeks, we'll default pretty much to the front plane, but there are instances where the top plane or right plane are more advantageous. But select on the front plane, start a sketch, and we're going to use the line tool. Click on line, move your pointer to the origin. When you get the orange dot, click, drag it straight up, and this is only going to be about 2 inches. We're going to make the letter F flip on its side. So about 2 inches. Click, make sure it's vertical. We know that because that yellow square with a vertical line in it. Click. Drag this across about 1 inch. Click. Drag this down about halfway. Notice you can infer to the midpoint of the other line. That's good. Go ahead and do it. Click. Drag this about another inch out. Make sure it's horizontal. Click. Drag this up and infer to that line once again. Click. Drag this across about 1 inch. Click. Drag this down and drag it down a little bit lower than that midpoint. Click. Drag this across about another inch. Click. All the way down until you can infer to the origin. If you can't see the inference line, move your pointer over here and wake it up. Sometimes I've seen where you have to wake it up. Click and then connect. Now go to Smart Dimension. Dimension this line right here. Center it 2 inches. Oops, backspace 2 inches. And this is 3.5. Let's go back to the manual here. And then we have 1, 1.75, and 2.5. So this, click on this, it'll be 1 inch. Click on this line to this line. This will be 1.75. And then notice I'm baseline dimensioning here. Click on this line again to this edge, and that'll be 2.5. Now we'll add some baseline dimensions here too. Click on this line down here to this line. That's going to be 1 inch. And then click on this line, and that'll be 0.8. Hit enter. And let's verify that on the drawing. 0.85, my mistake. So I'll just go back and fix that. An easy fix. Double click, 0.85. Hit enter. Now you might notice that this line is floating. In some other CAD systems, it automatically creates a relationship parallel to that. That's not turned on in here. So you'll see you could drag this up and down. But if you wanted a line, this is what you could do. Hit escape a couple times. Select that line. Now release it. Hold Control and select this line that you want it to be aligned to. Holding Control now. Release. Now on the left, make those collinear. And now they're aligned. Hit the green check. And notice it's fully defined, and we're ready to extrude it. Go to Features, Extrude Boss, and 0.5. So there we got to see, when we made that collinear, we could force our own relationships in, and we're going to see more of that as we continue to learn. So hit the green check, and you're done with this. Now again, I would recommend dressing it up a bit. Try the fillets and the chamfers. Go ahead and put some fillets on and rounds. You could, look at this, this is with Superman vision. You could highlight that back edge, click on this edge, this one, even an inside edge. Get that one there, and this one again with our X-ray vision, and this edge. We could even select this top face, hit apply. Rotate it around the back, go to shell. We'll keep it at 0.1, hit this face, and hit the green check, and we just shelled it out. And again, taking a very ordinary part and making it a little bit more complex, maybe a little bit nicer to show off in a portfolio. Again, it's a very basic one there, but you might want to put it in a portfolio if you dress it up a bit more. And you could also render it now. You could go to the render tools and put different colors on it and print those out in color, or save it as a PDF to send off to a potential employer with a collection of these things in a portfolio. All right, the next exercise, or lab I should call it. Oh, and by the way, when you create these, be aware you want to save them. So to save, go to File. You could do Save or Save As, either one. And when you do it, it gives it a generic name like Part 1, Part 2, and sequences to whatever part you've opened thus far. And go ahead and let's go ahead and put in, for labs, it'll be capital L1. For exercises, it'll be capital E1. And so next week when we do exercise 2, it'll be capital E2. And the week after that, capital E3. And the labs are always listed as L1, L2, L3. So on and so forth. All right, going back. This is lab 1B, And it's this block that you see here. We want to recreate that. And it's 3 by 5. And it's very similar to the first part, the exercise 1 that we did. It's just that you're adding more holes. It's all symmetric. And I'm going to show you a shortcut, something that's going to make your life a little bit easier. We're going to do some mirroring here. Normally mirroring isn't covered until exercise 2, so you're getting a little preview. Those of you who challenged yourself, though, before watching this video, I applaud you, because you didn't know how to do this and you tinkered with it. And you can put them in individually, and it's great practice. So let's go ahead and see how this is done. File, New. You could also just go right to the icon here. Here's New. Part, hit OK. Select the front plane. And, just for the heck of it, let's see what happens if we draw on the top plane. Click on the top plane, start a sketch. Doesn't seem any different, does it? And it really doesn't. There's tools that let you reorient it in a drawing, but it really pretty much stays stationary. And as long as you could keep up with the orientation and looking at it from a certain bird's eye view, you're going to be fine, whatever plane you sketch on typically. It might be easier, though, to sketch on certain planes. All right, let's take a look at another tool here, something that we haven't seen yet. Hit the little arrow to the right of corner rectangle. Whenever there's a symmetric part, think about midpoints and centered things. So here we have a centered rectangle. Click on center rectangle. Move your pointer to the origin, which is your anchor point. Click, drag this out, click, and go to Smart Dimension. Vertically, it's 3 inches, and the width is 5. Click on the Smart Dimension tool and add those. Now, whenever there's holes, and we could see in the drawing there's holes that are drilled through. We have each that are 0.5, and they're spaced 3/4 of an inch off of top and left edge, and then all the way around because it's symmetric. This is a perfect opportunity to understand how mirrors work. When there's a void or a cut that goes all the way through, you can do this. If the cut does not go through, don't bother adding these parameters in here. Make them as a separate sketch after you make the block. But here, right in this upper left corner, away from the center line, click and drag out a circle. Make sure you don't accidentally lock it in tangent to this edge. Otherwise, you won't be able to add the dimensions. So let it float away from there. So it's not touching. Click. Go to Smart Dimension, dimension the diameter, and that was 0.5. Now click on the center to the top edge, and that's 0.75. And again, center or actually the outside edge. You'll learn there's some other tricks associated with the outside edge. And here we have a bit of an issue where it's, let's see, oh, I accidentally selected the wrong edge. Let's do that again. Let me hit escape here. Select this center point to this edge, and right up there, click. And that's going to be point. I think I actually accidentally clicked on a quadrant of the actual circle. But anyhow, make that 0.75. Oops, let me backspace. All right, and again, lay these out if you have to. Pause for a moment and make them look orderly. Okay, now that we have those laid out, we're going to go ahead and get this mirrored over to the other sides. What you need are center lines. We haven't yet used or learned about center lines, but here you go. This is a little preview. Like I said, this is the advantage of trying it first on your own, then watch what I do. Hit the little arrow to the right of the line tool, find center line. Now draw from this center point straight up a vertical line, about 1 inch or so. Click. Now, we don't want to continue the line. See the line chain? A quick way to get out of the line chain without hitting escape, because escape will take you out of the tool, then you have to click on the tool again and start over. Just a simple double click. And unfortunately, it didn't take the first time, so I've got a fragment. And now that's a perfect opportunity. First, let me draw this line over here. Click and drag this across, click, hit escape. To get rid of a line, be careful. Don't ever click on points and then try and hit delete. It won't work. So if I click on this point and I hit delete, can't delete the endpoints. You got to select the line as a whole. Click on it. Hit delete. And that's all. You could also hit, there's an undo button up here. You could hit undo and back up on it. But I try not to show that to students too early. It is very useful, but I see students have a tendency to keep hitting undo, 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 and then they undo their entire part. Then I'm having to rebuild it for you in class. So Just be aware, undo is nice, but usually give it one undo. If it doesn't do what you're looking for, then pause and maybe delete or change or alter your sketch panel. Okay, so now those center lines are needed for a mirror tool. Watch this. Now I hit escape a couple times, hold control and select the circle and the vertical center line so the whole line lights up. Release control and your mouse and go up here to mirror entities and click on it. Mirror it across. Let's try that again. Now you could hold control and select all three of this item, and the horizontal line because we want to mirror it across that. Note you can't mirror across both two axes at one time. Not yet at least. But let's go ahead and there's another thing you could do. You could click and drag a fence to surround what you want. So like I could click and drag across here, a fence. And those are both selected. Anything not completely enveloped in the fence, if you're going from left to right, is negated. It's not in the selection. If you go from right to left, it's a different story. It's going to select everything that's touching your envelope. So with those two selected, I could hold control and select the horizontal center line and hit the mirror entities tool again. And there it is. Notice the shaded color. I neglected to tell you about that. The shaded color on the inside is to indicate you have a watertight boundary condition. Typically, unless you have to turn it off in the options menu, which I don't advise my students to do, if you don't see it shaded on the inside, it's typically not a watertight solid, i.e. there's an opening or a gap somewhere, and then it's not going to be possible to get maybe what you're looking for. So just be aware that's a good thing when you see the shaded like this. Now go to Features and Extrude Boss Base, and it should automatically leave voids where those circles were. Now be aware you don't want to put a circle inside of a circle inside of a circle. You're not going to be able to do that type of detail, but you could do a circle inside of a circle. Just one instance though, one nested feature usually. Or multiple nested features, but broken apart, not subsets of each other. Let's go ahead and extrude this the full 1.5 inches thick and hit the green check. Now select this face and start a sketch. I'm going to stay in this isometric mode and I'm going to go to the center rectangle again. And the advantage of doing the center rectangle, I have a perfect center. Click, drag this to this edge, make sure it snaps, go to Smart Dimension, dimension the width of that line, and according to the drawing it's 1.5 inches. And go to Features, Extrude Cut, and you're only going to cut this 1 inch, so 1, not 1.5. Hit the green check and click somewhere off of it, and now you've completed Lab 2, or I should say Lab 1B. And I recommend on this one, dress this one up too. Try the Fillet tool, select the edges here, and like if you want it bigger, just use this little dialog box here on the left to bump it up. I'm going to select these 4 edges, and you could use whatever you like. Tinker around with these settings. I'm even going to put in, oh no, I don't want that. That's going to be weird. I'll put in maybe this edge here, and this edge here. Hit the green check. And then we could try chamfer. Give chamfer a try again, and select this edge here, this edge here. These, we could put countersunk edges on this, hit the green check. And let's spin it around. Well, actually, let's put another fillet on here and set it to 0.1. Select this face and notice it puts it in. Select this face here, this face here. So we're selecting faces as well. And now it's even more complex. Flip it around the back and let's try shelling it out. Now shell, just be aware shell isn't always going to work depending upon the thicknesses and the features that you have. Sometimes you have to tinker with it a bit to get it to work. I'm going to go with 0.06 and select this face and apply. And now we have it shelled out. Remember, you could also enhance the colors. If you go to the render tools, we could select part. We could go to the beach ball, go to the sphere here. And on the right, we could either, on the left, change the color, or we could go over here. Let's make it, let's go to bronze, polished bronze. Hit apply, and then select, maybe select the holes. Hold control and select these holes. When you release control, you get the beach ball again. Hit the little arrow to the right of that, select faces, and just for the heck of it, let's make those chrome. Click on chrome, hit apply, and have fun with it. And again, you could turn on perspective mode. And if you go to integrated preview, sit back and watch it create a rendering for you. And that concludes exercise 1.